po tayo sa press conference ng Philippine Statistics Authority para sa June 2025 Inflation Report. We are pleased to welcome our media partners here with us on-site and online today. Ako po si Nicole Navea, ang inyong host for today's press briefing. Bago natin simulan ang inflation report, gusto na naming ipahayag na ito ay naka-livestream sa PSA Facebook and TikTok pages. Updates are also posted on the PSAX, formerly Twitter account with the hashtag PHCPI. Ikinagagala ko pong ipakilala si PSA Undersecretary Claire Dennis S. Mapa, National Statistician and Civil Registrar General na siyang mag-uulat tungkol sa paggalaw ng presyo ng mga bilihin sa Pilipinas nitong nakalipas na buwan ng Hunyo 2025. Ating pakinggan ang report ni Yusek Dennis Mapa.
Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Ang Philippine Statistics Authority mag-uulat ng antas ng inflation sa bansa para sa buwan ng Hunyo 2025. Ang headline inflation o pagtaas ng presyo ng mga produkto at serbisyo sa bansa ay bumilis sa antas na 1.4% nitong Hunyo 2025. Noong Mayo 2025, ang inflation ay naitala sa antas na 1.3% at 3.7% naman noong Hunyo 2024. Ang average inflation mula Enero hanggang Hunyo 2025 ay nasa antas na 1.8%. Ang pangunahing dahilan ng mas mataas na antas ng inflation nitong Hunyo kaysa noong Mayo 2025 ay ang mas mabilis na pagtaas ng presyo ng housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels sa antas na 3.2%. Ito ay may 63.3% share sa pagtaas ng pangkalatang inflation sa bansa. Ang pangunahing nag-ambag sa pagtaas ng inflation ng housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels ay ang mas mabilis na pagtaas ng presyo ng kuryente na may 7.4% inflation. Ang pangalawang dahilan ng mas mataas na antas ng inflation nitong Hunyo kaysa noong Mayo 2025 ay ang mas mabagal na pagtaas ng presyo ng transport na may negative 1.6% inflation. Ito ay may 23.8% share sa pagtaas ng pangkalatang inflation sa bansa. Ang mga nag-ambag sa mas mabagal na pagbaba ng presyo ng transport, mas mabagal na pagtaas ng presyo ng mga sumusunod. Gasolina na may negative 8.9% inflation at diesel na may negative 7.1% inflation. Ang pangatlong dahilan ng mas mataas na antas ng inflation nitong Hunyo kaysa noong Mayo 2025 ay ang mas mabilis na pagtaas ng presyo ng education services sa antas na 5.4% inflation. Ito ay may 7.7% share sa pagtaas ng pangkalatang inflation sa bansa. Ang mga pangunahing nag-ambag sa pagtaas ng inflation ng education services ay ang mas mabilis na pagtaas ng tuition fees sa mga sumusunod. Primary education na may 7.5% inflation, secondary education na may 6.7% inflation, at tertiary education na may 3.9% inflation. Pagdating naman sa contribution overall inflation itong Hunyo 2025, ang pangunahing commodity group ang ambag ay ang housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels na may 3.2% inflation at 46.7% share. Ang tatlong pangunahing nag-ambag sa inflation ng housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels ay ang mga sumusunod. Kuryente na may 7.4% inflation, na may 1.8% inflation, supply ng tubig na may 5.4% inflation. Ang pangalawang commodity group na may pinakamalaking contribution sa pangkalatang inflation nitong Hunyo ay ang restaurants and accommodation services na may 2.1% inflation at 14.9% share. Ang pangunahing nag-ambag sa inflation ng restaurants and accommodation services ay ang restaurants, cafe, and the like na may 2.1% inflation. Ang food and non-alcoholic beverages ang pangatlo sa may pinakamalaking ambag sa pangkalatang inflation nitong Hunyo 2025. Ang commodity group na ito ay nagtala ng 0.4% inflation at 10.8% share sa pangkalatang inflation sa bansa. Ang mga pangunahing nag-ambag sa inflation ng food and non-alcoholic beverages ay ang mga sumusunod. Meat and other parts of slaughtered land animals na may 9.1% inflation, particular dito ang karne ng baboy. Fish and other seafood na may 6.2% inflation tulad ng alumahan at fruits and nuts na may 9.7% inflation, particular dito ang mangga. Ang 5 pangunahing commodities na nag-ambag sa overall inflation nitong Hunyo 2025 ay ang mga sumusunod. Kuryente na may 7.4% inflation at 0.3 percentage point share. Karne ng baboy na may 13% inflation at 0.3 percentage point share. Renta sa bahay na may 1.8% inflation at 0.2 percentage point share. Restaurants, cafe and the like na may 2.1% inflation at 0.2 percentage point share. At karne ng manok na may 10.4% inflation at 0.2 percentage point share. Sa 13 commodity groups, 5 ang nagtala ng mas mabilis ng inflation nitong Hunyo 2025 kumpara noong Mayo 2025. Ito ay ang mga sumusunod. Clothing and footwear na may 1.7% inflation. Housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels na may 3.2% inflation. Furnishings, household equipment, and routine household maintenance na may 2.1% inflation. Education services na may 5.4% inflation at restaurants and accommodation services na may 2.1% inflation. Nagtala naman ng mas mabagal na pagbaba ng presyo nitong Hunyo 2025 ang transport na may negative 1.6% inflation. Samantala, mas mababa ang naitalang inflation rate nitong Hunyo 2025 kumpara noong Mayo sa mga sumusunod na commodity groups. Food and non-alcoholic beverages na may 0.4% inflation at personal care and miscellaneous goods and services na may 2.4% inflation. 5 commodity groups ang nagtala ng parehas na antas ng inflation noong Mayo 2025. Ito ay ang mga sumusunod. Alcoholic beverages and tobacco na may 3.8% inflation, health na may 2.4% inflation, information and communication na may 0.4% inflation, recreation, sport and culture na may 2.2% inflation, at financial services na may 0% inflation. Sa 11 pangkat ng pagkain, nagtala ng mas mabagal na pagtaas ng presyo nitong Hunyo 2025 ang ready-made food and other food products not elsewhere classified na may 2.2% inflation gaya ng baby formula. Mas mabilis naman ang pagbaba ng presyo na naitala nitong Hunyo 2025 sa mga sumusunod na pangkat ng pagkain. Bigas na may negative 14.3% inflation, mais na may negative 14.5% inflation, at sugar, confectionery, and desserts na may negative 0.7% inflation tulad ng sorbetes. Samantala, mula sa pagtaas ng presyo noong Mayo 2025, nagtala ng pagbaba ng presyo nitong Hunyo 2025 ang vegetables, tubers, cooking bananas at iba pa na may negative 2.8% inflation, particular dito ang repolyo. Nagtala naman ng mas mabilis ang pagtaas ng presyo nitong Hunyo ang mga sumusunod na grupo ng pagkain. Flour, bread, and other bakery products, pasta products, and other cereals na may 1.3% inflation. Meat and other parts of slaughtered land animals na may 9.1% inflation, particular dito ang karne ng baboy. Fish and other seafood na may 6.2% inflation tulad ng alumahan. Milk, other dairy products, and eggs na may 5.1% inflation, particular dito ang powdered milk. Oils and fats na may 7.1% inflation tulad ng mantika, at fruits and nuts na may 9.7% inflation gaya ng mangga. Ang core inflation kung saan hindi sinasama ang mga piling food and energy commodities na magalaw ang presyo ay nanatili sa antas ng inflation noong Mayo 2025 na nasa 2.2%. Noong Hunyo 2024, ang core inflation sa bansa ay nasa antas na 3.1%. Pagdating sa National Capital Region, ang headline inflation ay bumili sa antas na 2.6% nitong Hunyo 2025. Noong Mayo 2025, ito ay naitala sa antas na 1.7% at 2.3% naman noong Hunyo 2024. Ang pangunahing dahilan ng mas mabilis na antas ng inflation nitong Hunyo 2025 kaysa noong Mayo sa National Capital Region ay ang mas mabilis sa pagtaas ng presyo ng housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels na may inflation na nasa 6%. Ito ay may 85.9% share sa pagtaas ng pangkalatang inflation sa National Capital Region. Ang pangunahing dahilan ng pagtaas ng inflation ng housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels sa National Capital Region ay ang mas mabilis sa pagtaas ng presyo ng kuryente na may 27.4% inflation. Ang pangalawang dahilan ng mas mataas na antas ng inflation nitong Hunyo 2025 kaysa noong Mayo sa National Capital Region ay ang mas mabagal na pagbaba ng presyo ng transport sa antas na negative 1.6%. Ito ay may 7.0% share sa pagtaas ng pangkalatang inflation sa National Capital Region. Ang mga pangunahing nag-ambag sa mas mabagal na pagbaba ng presyo ng transport sa National Capital Region ay ang mas mabagal na pagbaba ng presyo ng mga sumusunod. Gasolina na may negative 7.8% inflation at diesel na may negative 6.0% inflation. Nakaambag din sa pagtaas ng inflation ng transport ang pagtaas ng presyo ng pamasahe sa eroplano na may 4.4% inflation mula sa pagbaba noong Mayo 2025. Sa mga lugar naman sa labas ng National Capital Region, ang inflation ay bumagal sa antas na 1.1% nitong Hunyo 2025. Noong Mayo 2025, ito ay naitala sa antas na 1.2% at 4.1% naman noong Hunyo 2024. Ang dahilan ng mas mabagal na antas ng inflation sa mga lugar sa labas ng National Capital Region ay ang food and non-alcoholic beverages na nagtala ng 0% inflation o walang paggalaw sa presyo nitong Hunyo 2025 mula sa presyo noong Hunyo 2024. Ito ay may 100% share sa pagbaba ng pangkalatang inflation sa mga lugar sa labas ng National Capital Region. Ang pangunahing dahilan ng pagbaba ng inflation ng food and non-alcoholic beverages sa mga lugar sa labas ng National Capital Region ay ang mas mabilis ng pagbaba ng presyo ng cereals and cereal products na may negative 11% inflation, particular dito ang bigas. Nakaambag din sa pagbaba ng inflation ng food and non-alcoholic beverages ang pagbaba ng presyo ng vegetables, tubers, cooking bananas at iba pa na may negative 2.4% inflation gaya ng kamatis. Ang pinakamataas na inflation sa mga riyon sa labas ng National Capital Region itong Hunyo 2025 ay naitala sa Region 1 o Ilocos Region na may 2.2% inflation. Samantala, nagtala ng negative inflation nitong Hunyo 2025 ang Region 10 o Northern Mindanao na may negative 0.3% inflation at Region 12 o Soc-Sargen at Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao na parehong nagtala ng negative 0.9% inflation. Kung ihambing ang inflation noong Mayo 2025, 10 riyon sa labas ng National Capital Region ang nagtala ng mas mababang inflation rates nitong Hunyo 2025. Ito ang mga riyon na may kulay berde. Kasama dito ang Region 10 o Northern Mindanao na nagtala ng negative inflation nitong Hunyo 2025 mula sa 0% inflation noong Mayo 2025. Samantala, 6 na riyon ang nagtala ng mas mataas na inflation rates nitong Hunyo 2025. Ito ang mga riyon na may kulay azul. Kasama dito ang Region 12 o Soc-Sargen at Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao na nagtala ng mas mabagal na pagbaba ng presyo nitong Hunyo 2025. Nanatili naman sa kanyang antas ng inflation noong Mayo 2025 ang Region 9 o Zamboanga Peninsula na may 0.2% inflation. Ang inflation rate para sa bottom 30% income households nitong Hunyo 2025 ay bumaba sa antas na negative 0.4%. Noong Mayo 2025, ito ay naitala sa 0% at 5.5% naman noong Hunyo 2024. Ang average Inflation para sa bottom 30% income households mula Enero hanggang Hunyo 2025 ay nasa antas na 0.8%. Ang mga pangunahing dahilan ng pagbaba ng inflation rate para sa bottom 30% income households nitong Hunyo 2025 ay ang mas mabilis sa pagbaba ng presyo ng food and non-alcoholic beverages na may negative 2.2% inflation at 72.6% share. Nakaambag din sa pagbaba ng inflation rate para sa bottom 30% income households ang mas mabagal na pagtaas ng presyo ng housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels na may 1.7% inflation at 27.4% share. Ang limang pangunahing commodities na nag-ambag sa overall inflation para sa bottom 30% income households nitong Hunyo 2025 ay ang mga sumusunod. Bigas na may negative 16% inflation at negative 2.6 percentage point share, mais na may negative 16% inflation at negative 0.3 percentage point share, gasolina na may negative 9.2% inflation at negative 0.1 percentage point share, pumpkins, squash, and gourds na may negative 11.6% inflation at negative 0.05 percentage point share, at cane sugar na may negative 1.9% inflation at negative 0.02 percentage point share. Ang monthly data ng inflation rate para sa all-income households at bottom 30% income households ay inyong makikita sa website ng Philippine Statistics Authority. Maaari itong ma-access sa mga links na naka-flash sa screen o sa pamamagitan ng pag-scan ng QR codes na nasa screen. Dito nagtatapos ang aking paglalahad ng antas ng inflation o pagtaas ng mga presyo ng mga bilihin at serbisyo sa bansa para sa buwan ng Hunyo 2025. Ang Philippine Statistics Authority ay lubos na nagagalak sa inyong paglahok sa press conference tungkol sa inflation sa bansa. Salamat at magandang umaga sa ating lahat.
Maraming salamat, Undersecretary Mapa, para sa ulat ng June 2025 inflation. Bago natin simulan ang question and answer segment, nais naming ipahayag na ang press kits para sa ating online participants ay aming ipapadala via email at ipamimigay naman po dito ang press kits para sa ating mga on-site participants. For those who have questions, please raise your hand to be recognized. For those online, please use the raise hand feature of Zoom or send your questions via the chat box. Once called, please state your name and organization. We are now ready for your questions. So any questions coming from our on-site participants first? Yes, Sir Mikhail Flores of Reuters.
NS, good morning.
Morning.
Sir, yung 14.3% drop sa rice inflation, we're looking at the time series data, parang record siya. And
Yung rice inflation,
yeah, 14.3% down.
pa-check natin yung
What's
time
the-
series.
Oh, sa comparative.
Siya yung lowest daw sa series. Yung pinakamalaking bagsak sa presyo sa series natin. Yung negative 14.3% since, well, I'm looking at 2018. No?
Yeah.
So, yun ang, I'm sorry, ano yung hanggang
1995 ba, sir? Yung
series
time
natin?
series na yun.
Yung time series natin, 1995, yes, and this is the biggest drop in terms of year-on-year inflation rate for rice.
Okay. Sir, and just a follow-up on that, in terms of data collection, kasi we have 20 pesos rice available in some localities, no? And it's not a price that's driven by market forces but by an externality. So, how do you factor in that?
Yung, of course, yung pagkolekta natin ng mga bilihin, yung presyo ng mga bilihin sa mga outlets, mayroon tayong sample outlets, may mga criteria tayo kung saan kinukuha itong mga datos natin sa sample outlets sa mga markets. But I was informed that even doon sa sample outlets natin, pumapasok na yung 20 peso per kilo na rice. May mga ibang outlets. So that is the reason why the average price, particularly yung regular milled rice, ay patuloy na pagbaba. So may impact na siya.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. We have a question from our online participant from Derco Rosal of Manila Bulletin. Specifically in Metro Manila, what impact will the 50 peso wage hike have on inflation in the coming months?
Okay, thank you for that. Yung ating effectivity ng 50 peso wage increase dito sa National Capital Region ay July 18 pa. Ang nakikita natin doon sa mga areas na nagkaroon ng mga wage increases, una ay may lag effect tayo. So hindi kaagad 'yon na nagkakaroon ng impact. Pero may mga nauunang commodity items no nagkakaroon ng pagtaas. Usually yung mga items na mataas yung labor input dahil of course wages yun So isa doon yung personal care, yung miscellaneous goods and services. So yun na nakikita namin na mayroong pagtaas ng presyo. Hindi naman automatic pero may lag siya. So titingnan natin yun mga a month, 2 months or 3 months after July, siguro doon natin makikita ang ating increases on certain items. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions coming from our on-site participants? Yes, Ms. Sujin Kim of Billionario.
Good morning po, NS.
Good morning.
NS Education Services jumped month on month. Could we get sound bites lang on what's driving this increase? Maybe tuition hikes or higher fees ba from schools?
Ang primary, ito kasing education services natin subgroup talagang tuition fees ito. Yung mga school supplies, ibang subgroup yan. So, dito nakikita namin, kasi opening of classes nga, na nagkaroon talaga ng increases doon sa tuition fees. So, as mentioned kanina, yung primary education natin ay tumaas. Nagkaroon tayo ng inflation rate na 7.5%. Yung secondary education, 6.7%. At yung tertiary education, 3.9%. So all driven by increases in tuition fees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go first with the question of Ms. Aubrey Inosante of Business World, and then to be followed by ma'am in the third row. Thanks.
Morning po.
Good morning.
Aubrey Nusante po from Business World. So, the Middle East war po have steadied and hindi na po ganun kalaki yung impact. But nagkaroon pa rin po ng oil price hikes, pump prices. When do we expect po this to affect the inflation?
Itong oil price, may impact ito. Nakita natin in the previous years at again doon sa pag-aaral ng PSA doon sa datos, yung impact niya kadalasan may delay usually mga 2 months makikita natin. It will have impact of course depende kung gaano kalaki yung increases niya. In the previous years, particularly noong 2022, 2023, medyo substantial. Kaya nagkaroon talaga tayo ng substantial effect. So ito titingnan natin, but in that in the previous data, nagkakaroon siya ng lag effect, usually mga 2 to 3 months. So we will be monitoring the impact of recent price increases in the next rounds of inflation. Thank you.
Yes po. Sorry, may follow-up lang po ko dun sa approved 50 pesos wage hike. Sabi po kanina, meron ding lag effects.
Yes.
From the past wage hikes po na parehas na levels, gaano po yung naging effect dun sa inflation? Is it
Hindi
moderate?
namin na measure ang nakita lang namin may mga sectors tayo, may mga sub-commodity groups na nagkaroon siya ng pagtaas na una. Sabi ko nga kanina, ito yung mga subgroups na malaki yung labor input. Particularly, mayroon tayong subgroup dito na personal care, miscellaneous goods and services. Ito yung mga salon, spa, tapos yung mga gumagawa ng appliances. So ito ang usual na may impact talaga. Although yung weight niya sa inflation basket ay hindi naman ganun kataas, 4.5%. Pero sa previous wage increases, dito unang nakikita yung impact. Thank you.
Thank you po.
Thank you very much. Yes, Miss.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Sir. Lois Calderon of Newswatch Plus. Sir, my question actually is the same as Business World's question. Let me just rephrase it. So I understand that the economic team already made assumptions on the impact of inflation, of the wage hike. on inflation. That's for 100 pesos and 200 peso legislated wage hike. I know that you have a rule of thumb. So would it be safe to say that I'll just, well, it's extrapolate, divide it by 2 for the assumption that you have for 100 pesos, which is around 0.2 percentage points. I forget now the exact figure.
Yung una kasi, yung trend niya, of course, may nakikita tayong pag-increase, ano? Yung actual amount kasi, depende yun sa ibang, galaw din ng ibang items, ano? So sabi ko nga, very dynamic yung ating prices. Sa ngayon, nakikita nyo, while the inflation is actually slow down, of course, may pag-angat tayo itong June compared to May, makikita natin, for example, iba yung impact niya sa NCR. May increase sa NCR. I hope you noticed that. Substantial, actually, versus last month. Nagkaroon naman ng downward trend sa areas outside NCR. Because the consumption kasi, tine-explain ko na ito last previous press conference, ay iba. So, sa NCR, yung impact niya dahil doon sa kuryente. Kasi malaki ang ating weight doon sa housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels. Sa areas outside NCR, ang malaking nagkaroon ng impact ay yung food items, particularly yung bigas. Pero if you'll notice, while rice actually retreated and then corn, may mga pagtaas din sa presyo ng iba pang mga commodities. Meat, chicken, fish. Ngayong buwan ng Hunyo, itong nakaraang buwan ng Hunyo, yung vegetables ay bumaba. So while we are expecting an increase, the amount would vary depending on the movement of the other items. Thank you.
Sir, if I may follow up. Well, June inflation is just 1.4%, a tad higher than May. But prior to that, we've seen 4 consecutive months of contraction in inflation. So had there been, an inflation drop or inflation slowed in June, that would have been 5 consecutive months of slowdown. That would have been a record based on economists, monitoring. Now, having said that, Yusek, since this is just, a tad, how do you see the inflation path moving, in the succeeding months?
Yung ating nakikita dito is that first, yung rice contribution, yung rice inflation, no, what we're expecting is that it will really be negative until the end of the year. So malaki yung weight kasi ng bigas doon sa ating inflation basket. So that is actually on the good news side, no. But what we're seeing is that there are items, particularly nga yung meat, fish na mataas siya. So yun ang isa sa mga tinitingnan natin. Plus of course the impact of transportation via the oil prices in the world market. So there are items that we're seeing that are actually going down or even negative, but there are items that are quite with high volatility. Plus, of course, medyo mayroon siyang we can say threat that it could increase depending on the situation in the other commodities. Ang tinitingnan natin, of course, yung price ng oil in the world market. But right now, yung meat and fish, chicken, talagang consistently mataas in the previous months. Thank you.
Very much, Yusek.
Thank you very much. Now, we'll proceed to some online questions first before we take questions from our on-site participants. Before I call on Ms. Denise Osorio, related to your statement, Yusek Mapa, JC Cosico of TV5 mentioned, paano nakaapekto sa inflation ng oil price hike dulot ng Israel and Iran conflict?
Yung oil price hike, yung pumapasok doon sa price ng gasoline at diesel, ang una niyang pinapasukan talaga yung transport basket natin, no? So ito yung price ng oil at other related products, including yung ating mga pamasahe. So itong transport kasi, medyo substantial yung weight niya sa ating inflation basket, 9%. So dito siya una pumapasok. And then pag tuloy-tuloy yun, as we experience it during the time of the Ukraine crisis, nagkaroon din ng impact dun sa other food items na. So transport mo ng una and then it goes to other items. So we will monitor, no, kasi mayroon siyang increase, pero I think itong July ay first week nagkaroon naman ng pagbaba. So we will monitor this, and the PSA is actually collecting data on a weekly basis naman dito sa prices of gasoline and diesel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Denise Osorio, she is online. Ms. Denise, can we ask you to unmute yourself, please, or our facilitator? Thank you.
Good morning po, Isaac. Hello po.
Good morning, Denise.
Sir, follow-up question po to the previous answer that you gave to ABS-CBN. Could we get a soundbite po on what the reason is behind the disparity of the inflation in NCR compared to other regions? Like, why is it still higher in NCR po?
Is yung pag-explain ko kanina, yung ating consumption basket kasi ay iba-iba, no? Dito sa National Capital Region, substantial ang weight niya. Of course, ang nangunguna pa rin dyan ay yung food natin, ano? Pero ang next na isa sa malaki na weight ay yung water, electricity, gas, and other fuels. So, ang ating housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels, yung weight niya sa National Capital Region ay nasa 27.4%. Outside the National Capital Region, ito ay 19.9%. At isa sa malaking factor, no, na nag-contribute sa pagtaas ng housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels dito sa National Capital Region ay yung presyo ng kuryente na na-mention ko kanina. Ang weight niya kasi, itong price of electricity, yung binabayad natin, 5.5% sa National Capital Region. Ang weight naman sa labas ng National Capital Region ay nasa 4.3%. Ang pangalawa na nag-contribute din, substantial, ay yung renta sa bahay. Dito kasi sa National Capital Region, ang renta sa bahay ay halos 18%. On the other hand, outside the National Capital Region, ito ay 11.5%. So, ito talaga, substantial ang weight ng housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels for the NCR. Mas malapit siya doon sa food and non-alcoholic beverages. So dahil tumaas itong yung mga presyo dito sa items under housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels, kaya nagkaroon tayo ng parang shift in the direction, substantial yung increase sa National Capital Region. Doon naman sa labas ng National Capital Region, pagkain, no? Kasi malaki yung weight ng pagkain at nakita natin, bumababa yung presyo ng major items, particularly dito yung bigas. Thank you.
Sir, I have two other questions po.
Go ahead.
When it comes po to the food inflation, what could be the reason behind the prices of the food commodities po dropping in prices? Kaya po bumagal yung food inflation. Tsaka po, do we have a projection po if there's a possibility na tumaas po ito due to the incoming rainy season po?
Ang una sa food inflation, kaya in general, yung presyo ng mga bilihin, no, under the food and non-alcoholic beverages as a basket ay bumabagal dahil doon sa bigas. Ang presyo ng or ang weight kasi ng bigas sa ating food basket ay halos mga 30%, no? 1/3 of the food ay bigas. At nakita natin kanina, negative, double digit na yung negative inflation for rice, nasa minus 14.3% na tayo. So yun yung major factor. Although may mga, sabi ko nga kanina, may mga items naman, hindi ganun kataas yung weights niya, ay tumataas tulad ng meat and fish. So nagkaroon talaga ng major effect itong negative inflation o pagbaba ng presyo ng bigas sa ating mga merkado. Thank you.
Sir, clarification lang po. So because the rice prices went down, it has affected all the other food commodities po? Tama po?
No, it's not. It is affecting the food basket inflation because of the substantial weight of the price of rice.
Thank you po.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Denise. Now, I guess for last two questions from our on-site participants. Yes, Ms. Jed Neresina of UNTV.
Good morning po.
Guys, quiet.
Naging mataas po yung, Main driver po dito sa inflation rate natin ngayong June is yung pagtaas sa kuryente. Ano po yung naging reason bakit ito po yung naging main driver? Bakit bahagyang mas bumilis po yung inflation last month?
Yung nagkaroon ng adjustment no sa prices sa electricity kasi year on year tayo. I was informed that while there was a reduction in the price for the month of June versus May, mas malaki pa rin ito compared sa June last year. So kasi ang ating pag-compute ng inflation ay year on year. So substantial yung gap niya from June 2024. That's why our electricity inflation is at 7.4% versus 2.8% noong Mayo. And sabi ko nga kanina, ito ay may weight na nasa almost 4.6%. So pag kinumpute mo yon, maliit yung weight niya, pero malaki yung inflation rate, kaya malaki rin yung impact. Plus of course, may mga inflation or may mga items tayo under housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels na matataas yung weight at patuloy na nagkakaroon tayo ng inflation rate. Mababa siya but because of the substantial weight, ang isa ay yung renta sa bahay. Ang ating inflation rate ay 1.8% but the weight for that is 12.5%, 12.8% rather. Pangalawa, yung bayad sa supply sa tubig. Ang ating inflation rate ay 5.4% sa June, slightly lower than May na 5.7%, pero mataas pa rin. No? Ang weight niya ay nasa 1.2%. At finally, yung ating LPG. Ito ay may inflation rate na 1.9%, slightly lower compared to the May inflation of 2.9%, with a weight of 1.3%. So ito yung mga items na nagkaroon ng contribution doon sa pagtaas ng inflation rate, particularly as I mentioned, National Capital Region. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek Mapa. Now, okay, you have a follow-up question. Yes, and then to be followed by Ms. Bernadette Reyes and Ms. Titas Lopez.
Another question po, Yusek. Since last na po up until etong latest inflation rate po natin, paano po nyo madidescribe yung naging trend ng mga inflation rates dun sa mga nasabing buwan po? Thank you po.
Ano na talaga going down so the SONA happened July 2024. Ang inflation rate natin headline lang 4.4%. Ito ay bumaba noong August 3.3%, bumaba ng September 1.9%, tumaas ng October 2.3 but still in the band of 2 and 4%. November it was 2.5%, December 2.9, January 2.9 and then pababa na 2.1 noong Feb, March 1.8, April 1.4, May 1.3 and June 1.4. So the general direction since July 2024 is that inflation rate at the headline inflation is actually going down.
Thank you, Yusek Mapa. Now, for Ms. Bernadette Reyes of GMA.
Sir, good morning.
Morning.
Opo. Yusek, gusto ko lang po sana maintindihan yung dynamics. Bakit po electricity yung nag-contribute dun sa increase sa
NCR.
in general? Opo. Pero doon naman sa bottom 30%, parang yun yung nag-contribute sa downward. Does it mean that we're subsidizing yung ano?
Hindi naman. Yung sabi ko nga kanina, yung consumption iba kasi yung kinukonsumo, so binabayaran ng ating mga households doon sa bottom 30%. So tingnan lang natin yung weight. Doon sa bottom 30%, ang malaking weight talaga ay pagkain. Ang weight ng food and non-alcoholic beverages ay almost 55% sa bottom 30%. So more than half of their consumption is actually on food. And kung i-compare natin doon sa all-income households, yung parang average household, ito ay nasa 38.8%. Now, yung 55% na yan, halos mga 40% yan ay cereals, yung bigas, which is experiencing actually a huge negative inflation, double digit. So yun yung isang factor. So yung pagkain para dun sa in general yung kabuuan ng food basket ng ating mga households at the bottom 30% ay pababa may impact din sa kanila yung electricity of course, pero yung weight ng electricity para sa bottom 30% income household ay nasa 4.5% din, halos pareho lang doon sa average household, but the one that contributed to the slowdown, which is negative, in fact, in June, is really the prices of food. Thank you.
To say na habang nakaka-experience tayo in general ng increase, mas nakakaluwag-luwag naman itong bottom 30%.
Yes, kasi ang while sabi ko nga kanina, may mga items under the food basket na tumataas din, yung meat, yung fish, but in general, the group of commodities under the food basket talagang pababa yung presyo niya, negative yung karamihan, yung bigas, yung mais, vegetables. So these are actually items commonly consumed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our last question for this press conference from Ms. Titas Lopez of Bloomberg.
Good morning,
Morning,
Yusek.
Titas.
Para po sa buwan ng Hulyo, mayroon na po bang indikasyon na mas magiging mataas ito kumpara sa June, yung inflation? Mas mataas o mas mababa?
Sa ngayon, may mga, I cannot really have the overall, but what I can look at based on the data, what I can conclude actually on certain items. So as I mentioned, yung price of rice. Una, nakita natin na yung presyo ng bigas ay talagang magkakaroon ng negative inflation rate, no? Pababa talaga year on year. So that's good news kasi sabi ko nga kanina, substantial naman yung weight niya. Yung vegetables, negative na rin siya, so that's also okay. But there are items that are, of course, increasing. Kung kanina na-notice nyo yung presyo ng baboy, yung inflation rate sa meat, particularly yung pork, mataas siya. Yung fish, yun yung talagang two items na yon that is creating a threat dito sa inflation rate, particularly in food items. So the dynamics this month of July, kung hindi yun, let's say, ma-change yung direction natin doon sa meat and fish at magkakaroon ng increases sa iba, pwede na may slight increase tayo na nakikita. But if there are decreases dito sa mga items na to, then we will be seeing lower inflation. Thank you.
Sir, sa inyong pananaw, pwede po kayang manatiling mas mababa sa 2%
Yeah,
ang inflation for the
Yes,
rest of the year?
ano naman ito kasi 1.3 to 1.4, but in general nasa na tayo dun sa vicinity na talaga ng 2%, lower than 2%.
Below target na. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a follow-up question from, I think we can accommodate one last from Sir Miguel Flores of Reuters. For those who cannot be accommodated, we shall provide your answers via email if that's all right. Thank you. Last question, Sir Miguel Flores.
Thank you. And it's just very quickly sa core, it's unchanged from last month, 2.2. I was wondering if in the view of the PSA, yung core inflation already bottomed out or is there still space para
the bottom?
para bumaba pa below 2% based on
What are the
trends?
items that, you know?
Sir, yung core inflation kasi we're at
We're at 2.2.
2.2.
Yeah.
May room pa ba na bumaba pa in the coming months or is this a case of core bottoming out already at this level?
Yeah, it's been 2.2 for the last 4 months. I think that's what you are looking at. Yung mga items kasi, of course, yung mga magagalaw na items, wala na doon. Yung items that are actually included in the core inflation, I'd like to highlight dito yung, alam ko, yung fish, nandito siya. Hindi lahat, but some products. And then also yung ating meat, no? Not all, but there are certain products. So these are the products that are actually, I'm looking at the food items that are part of the core inflation. These are the items that are quite stable in terms of the inflation rate. So siguro yun yung kakaroon ng factor, kaya parang nandun tayo sa mga 2.2% level. But we will check. No, I have not really scrutinized the movement of items under the core inflation. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So that ends our very productive round of Q&A for the June 2025 inflation report. We would like to thank you all for joining us in this press conference, and we hope for your continued support in communicating statistics to the public. So you may visit our official website, psa.gov.ph, for more updates. Once again, ako si Nicole Navea ng Philippine Statistics Authority. Maraming salamat at magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.